My son and his wife were leaving on a cruise, leaving me to watch my 7-year-old grandson, who had been silent since birth. The moment they were gone, my grandson suddenly looked at me with grave eyes and spoke in a clear, firm voice. "Grandma, don't drink the tea Mommy made for you. She's planning something." I was stunned. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Follow my story to the end and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled. The cruise ship floated majestically before my eyes, its lights twinkling as if showing off. Crowds of people laughed, snapped photos, and dragged suitcases behind them. I stood a little ways behind my son, Dan, and his wife, Ashley, trying to brace myself against the damp sea breeze. My knees were already starting to ache from standing too long. But I kept quiet. This was the vacation Ashley had been dreaming of for years. "You only live once, Eleanor," she'd say. "Life is meant to be enjoyed." That was her constant refrain. Earlier, in the car on the way to the port, Ashley had leaned back from the front passenger seat, placing a neatly packaged bottle of tea in a crisp paper bag on my lap. "Eleanor, this is an herbal wellness blend from the nutritionist on the ship. It's great for your bones. Good for the heart, too. Drink it every night while we're gone." "Okay," she said, flashing a sweet smile. In the same bag was a box of supplements. "And take these vitamins after you eat." Dan, who was driving, just glanced briefly in the rearview mirror before his eyes darted back to the road. His jaw was tight, as if he were holding something back. I simply nodded at the time. The tea bottle felt cool in my palm. The label was professionally printed with foreign words I didn't quite understand. "I'll read it carefully later," I murmured. "You do that," Ashley added, her voice soft, but her eyes were too sharp, too bright. Maybe I was just being sensitive, I thought. Old age makes you suspicious. Now, at the port, Ashley was busy organizing luggage and flagging down a porter. Dan stood beside me, quietly smoking a cigarette, then quickly stamping it out when a member of the ship's crew walked by. "Mom, don't overdo it at home, okay? Take care of Leo, but don't forget to take care of yourself," he said without looking at me. His tone was flat, like he was reciting a memorized line. I turned to Leo. My little grandson stood clutching a small blue toy car, his body pressed against Dan's leg. His eyes were fixed on the ship, his expression blank. Since he was a baby, Leo had never made a sound other than crying. The doctors said he was non-verbal. Every time a therapist spoke to us, Ashley would quickly interject, "Yes, doctor, we'll work on it." But at home, I often saw Leo simply left in front of a tablet. "Leo, sweetheart, give Grandma a hug. I'll be taking care of you," I said, opening my arms. He turned his head slowly, his face innocent. He didn't move, just hugged his toy car tighter. Ashley approached, ruffling Leo's hair in a fleeting gesture. "Hug your grandma, honey," she said, her voice tinged with impatience. Only then did Leo take 2 small steps toward me and briefly press his little body into my embrace. The call for boarding echoed across the terminal. Ashley immediately grabbed Dan's arm. "Come on, honey, we'll be late." "Mom, thank you so much for doing this. For watching Leo," she said loudly, as if wanting everyone within earshot to hear what a good daughter-in-law she was. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, and the scent of an expensive, cloying perfume filled my senses. "Don't forget to drink the tea, Eleanor," she whispered in my ear, "so you can live a long life." Then she let out a little laugh. I managed a weak smile. "You too, be careful, Ashley. Dan, take care of your wife." Dan shook my hand, his head bowed, but his eyes felt empty. "I will, Mom," he replied softly. I watched them go until they reached the security gate. Leo, holding Dan's hand, glanced back at me once before disappearing into the throng of passengers. After they had vanished through the ship's gangway, I stood for a few more minutes, staring at the backs of strangers. A strange feeling settled in my chest, empty, yet heavy. The Uber ride home felt long. The driver tried to make small talk, but I answered only in short phrases. The bottle of tea on my lap felt like a stone. Ashley had placed it there just before they boarded, as if it were the most important thing I needed to bring home. I occasionally squeezed the paper bag, hearing the crinkle of plastic inside. By the time I arrived home, the sun was beginning to set. My house isn't large, but every corner is filled with memories. A photo of my late husband still hangs on the living room wall. I put my purse on a chair, placed the tea and supplements on the coffee table, and called out softly, "Leo." The boy had come in a few minutes after me, dropped off right at the gate. He walked into the house with small steps and immediately sat on the living room floor. Pulling his blue toy car from his little backpack, he began rolling it back and forth on the tile, making no sound other than the quiet whir of plastic wheels against ceramic. I went to the kitchen, got a glass, and filled it with tap water. My throat was dry. When I returned to the living room, my gaze fell on the tea bottle again. The liquid was a golden color, looking perfectly normal. Herbal, Ashley had said. The label was covered in fine print, with some technical terms and the names of plants I'd never heard of. I told myself I'd get my reading glasses and look at it later. I picked up the bottle, weighing it in my hand. Leo was still engrossed with his car, his back to me. The house was utterly silent. No TV, no sound of Ashley giving orders from the kitchen, no Dan on a work call. Just me, my grandson, and a bottle of tea from my daughter-in-law. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, intending to put the tea in the refrigerator. Just as I reached the doorway, the hairs on my arms stood on end. For some reason, I stopped. I turned around. Leo had stopped moving his car. His small hand held the blue toy aloft. Frozen, he was still sitting with his back to me, but his head was slowly, deliberately turning. It was a controlled movement, not like that of a clumsy 7-year-old. His eyes met mine. It was a look I had never seen from him before. His eyes had always been vacant, confused, or distant. Now, there was something in them. "Leo?" I called softly. He rose to his feet. The toy car fell from his hand, rolling silently under the coffee table. For the first time in his life, I saw my grandson stand tall and face me directly. His lips moved. The sound that came out was hoarse, stiff, but clear. "Grandma." The bottle nearly slipped from my grasp. My heart felt like it stopped for a second. "Leo, you can talk?" "Grandma," he repeated, a little louder. "Don't drink the tea Mommy made for you." I was frozen in place. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. The living room, the kitchen, the sound of cars outside, it all faded away. Only Leo's voice echoed in my ears. "Mommy and Daddy?" Leo swallowed hard, his face tensing as if fighting against something that had bound his tongue for years. "They're planning something." The blood drained from my face. The tea bottle trembled in my hand. "Leo?" My voice was barely a whisper. He stared at me for a few more seconds, then seemed to jolt, as if snapping out of a trance. His shoulders slumped, and his eyes widened with fear. Without another word, he quickly bent down, picked up his toy car, and sat back on the floor. His movements became stiff again. He slid the car back and forth, pretending to be absorbed in his game, as if nothing had happened. "Leo," I approached, sitting in a chair near him. "What did you just say, sweetheart?" He didn't look up. The toy car moved back and forth along the same imaginary path. His lips were sealed tight. There was no more sound. My hands were shaking violently. I looked at the bottle of tea. I remembered Ashley's face at the port, her thin smile, her whisper in my ear. "Don't forget to drink the tea, Mom, so you can live a long life." I stood up slowly, carried the bottle back to the kitchen. Without a second thought, I opened a cabinet and shoved the bottle deep behind a stack of old plates. I put the box of supplements on the highest shelf. In the living room, Leo was still pretending to play, but I couldn't see him the same way anymore. The child I had believed to be mute had just saved my life. Or at least, he had tried to. I leaned my back against the kitchen wall, my knees weak. On the adjacent wall, a photo of a young Dan smiled, holding a Little League trophy. I stared at the photo, then closed my eyes. "Danny, what are you really doing to your mother?" I whispered, my own voice sounding alien to my ears. For the first time, I was truly afraid of my own son. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat in my wicker chair in front of the silent television, my eyes fixed on the cabinet where I'd hidden the tea. I had already carried Leo to the small bedroom next to mine, tucked him in, and whispered a short prayer in his ear. He hugged his blue toy car, his eyes squeezed shut as if trying to forget what he had said that afternoon. I couldn't sleep. Leo's words spun in my head. "Don't drink the tea. Mommy and Daddy are planning something." I stood and walked quietly to the kitchen. I took the bottle out again. I sniffed the opening. It smelled like a normal, slightly pungent herbal tea. Nothing seemed strange. The label was professionally done, like an imported product, with tiny letters, some in a foreign language, some naming plants I didn't recognize. Eleanor, you're overreacting, I muttered to myself. Could Dan and Ashley really do something like that? But Leo had spoken. The child who had lived 7 years in silence had spoken. And his first words weren't, "Grandma," or, "I love you," but a warning. I took a small glass and poured a little of the tea into it. The liquid was a clear, golden color. It looked normal. I was about to bring the glass to my lips when I heard a soft meow at the kitchen window. It was the neighbor's striped cat, Patches, a frequent visitor whenever I was cooking. He was perched on the windowsill, looking at me expectantly. "Hungry?" I asked instinctively. I don't know if it was my conscience or something else, but a sudden impulse, a mix of mischief and fear, took over. I placed the glass on the floor near the slightly ajar back door. The cat slipped inside, approached the glass cautiously, and took a delicate lick from the rim. "Just a little," I whispered, feeling guilty. "If this is just ordinary tea, no harm done. If it's not." The cat licked again, this time more deeply. I watched, my heart pounding. For the first 5 minutes, nothing happened. The cat even rubbed against my leg and wandered around the kitchen. Just as I was about to pick the glass up, I heard a small, choked sound from behind me. The cat was lying on its side next to the pantry. Its body was rigid, its legs twitching for a moment, and then it fell still. Its breathing had stopped completely. I let out a small scream, clapping my hand over my mouth. The glass in my other hand nearly fell. Oh my God. I quickly crouched down and touched the cat's body. It was still warm, but its eyes were vacant. No blood, no wound. It had just died, right after licking Ashley's herbal tea. My hands went cold. I quickly picked up the glass, washed it thoroughly under the faucet, and poured the remaining tea down the sink drain. I put the bottle back in the cabinet. But this time, it wasn't to save it for later. I was keeping it as evidence. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cat's face, its tongue lapping at the tea, its body suddenly stiffening. Early the next morning, before Leo woke up, I decided to take the bottle of tea to the small urgent care clinic near the grocery store. I wrapped it carefully in a tote bag. "Eleanor, you're here early," the nurse at the front desk said. "Feeling all right?" "Not exactly, Brenda. I wanted to ask about this," I replied, slowly taking out the bottle. "It's some kind of herbal tea a friend gave me. I just wanted to know if it's safe for someone my age to drink." The nurse frowned and called for Dr. Evans. He was an older doctor who had known my family for years, treating our minor illnesses. "Well, Eleanor, you're looking well," he greeted me warmly. "Looks can be deceiving, doctor," I said, trying to joke, but my voice was hoarse. "I'm just curious about this drink." He took the bottle, read the label, and sniffed it gently. "This isn't a brand I'm familiar with," he said. "Who gave it to you?" "A friend," I answered quickly. "She said it's good for bones and heart health." Dr. Evans shook his head slightly. "Without a clear list of ingredients and FDA approval, I can't say it's safe, especially for someone your age. I'd advise against drinking it. We see a lot of cases where these unregulated, herbal drinks are mixed with all sorts of things." All sorts of things? Could it be dangerous? It could, from stomach ulcers to kidney damage. Some have even been found to be laced with prescription drugs. Rat poison, you name it, a layperson would never know. The words, rat poison, hit me like a slap. I wrung the hem of my shirt. What if, hypothetically, doctor, my neighbor's cat happened to lick a little of this last night, and then suddenly had a seizure and died? Could this drink have caused that? Dr. Evans fell silent. He looked at me more seriously. "If the timeline is as you describe, it's highly possible there's a toxic substance in it. But to be certain, it would need to be tested in a lab. Unfortunately, we don't have the facilities for that kind of detailed analysis here." I nodded slowly. "So I should probably just throw it away?" "I would advise not to drink it. And if you're suspicious, at the very least, make sure no one else drinks it either." His gaze seemed to want to ask more, but he restrained himself. "This was from a friend?" he repeated doubtfully. "Yes, a friend," I replied softly, looking away. I knew if I mentioned Ashley's name, More questions would follow, and I wasn't ready for that. When I returned from the clinic, I found Leo sitting on the living room floor, still with his blue car. He glanced at me for a moment before pretending to focus on his game again. I sat down in front of him. Leo, I called gently, what did you tell Grandma yesterday? I'd like to hear it again. He was silent. His hand moved the car, but the motion grew slower and slower. I took a piece of paper and some colored pencils from a drawer. If it's hard to talk, you can draw it for me. Grandma saw a doctor today. The doctor said that tea is dangerous. Did you see Mommy do anything to that tea? Leo didn't answer. His eyes shifted to the paper. Slowly, he put down his car and picked up a pencil. His small hand trembled. He began to draw a rectangle, the kitchen counter. I assumed. Then he drew a bottle and a stick figure of a woman with long hair who was clearly supposed to be Ashley. Above the bottle, he drew something like a small spoon, pouring tiny specks into the bottle. After that, he drew a male figure standing further away, holding his head as if in distress. Below it, he slowly wrote, in a child's imperfect letters, Mommy and Daddy. I held my breath. What did Mommy pour in? Sweetheart? I asked quietly. Leo drew tiny dots falling from the spoon into the bottle. He then drew a line from the bottle to a small house with a triangular roof, which looked like mine. Above the house, he wrote slowly, Grandma. Tears streamed down my face without my realizing it. What did they say then? Leo? He put down the pencil and looked at me, his lips trembling. No words came out. He looked down and covered his ears with both hands, his body shivering. I rushed to hug him. It's okay. It's okay. Grandma understands. You've helped enough. Thank you, honey. That afternoon, after Leo was napping in his room, I opened the small filing cabinet in my bedroom. In the bottom drawer, I kept old documents, the deed to the house, my pension papers, old insurance policies. I shifted a few folders, and tucked between a stack of papers was a crisp white envelope I'd never seen before. My name was clearly printed on the front, along with the logo of an unfamiliar insurance company. I pulled out the contents. It was a life insurance policy, taken out on me. The date was only a few months ago. The words swam before my eyes, but one line stood out, primary beneficiary, Ashley Miller. My hands trembled. Why not Dan? Why not Leo? Why my daughter-in-law? The premiums were being paid automatically from a joint account I had opened with Dan years ago to make it easy for him to send me monthly support. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the paper nearly falling from my hand. A series of small, unsettling moments from the past few years started to connect in my mind. Dan frequently complaining about his business needing more capital. Ashley becoming more ambitious about her lifestyle. The way they had recently started talking about this house as an underutilized asset. Last night, the neighbor's cat died after licking the tea. This morning, the doctor said the drink could be dangerous. Leo drew his mother pouring something into the bottle. And now, in my hands, was a new life insurance policy with Ashley as the beneficiary. 3 things I could no longer call coincidences. I looked at the small family photo hanging on my bedroom wall. Me in the middle, Dan on one side, Ashley on the other, Leo in front. We were all smiling. I used to think that photo was proof that I wasn't alone in the world. Now, the smiles in that picture felt like masks. I took a deep breath. If I stay silent, I'll die slowly, I whispered to myself. And Leo, who knows what will happen to him? Inside my chest, the fear and pain began to morph, slowly hardening into anger, a solid, dense anger that made my hands stop shaking. The next morning, I woke up a different person. Still afraid? Yes, but something had solidified inside me. It felt like the way I used to feel when I had to discipline a difficult student in my classroom, shaky but firm. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the insurance policy that had fallen to the floor the night before. I slipped it back into its envelope, then into a smaller folder I used for my grocery lists. All right, I murmured to myself, if they can plan things behind my back, so can I. First, I had to make a decision. I could not let Dan and Ashley know that I knew. If they found out, they could change their methods, hide the evidence, or perhaps even accelerate their plans. So, from that day on, I made a promise to myself. In front of them, I would remain Eleanor, gullible, trusting, a little forgetful. Behind their backs, I would keep my eyes wide open. Leo came out of his room. rubbing his eyes, his hair a mess. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Toast or oatmeal?" He looked at me for a moment, as if still processing the events of the last 2 days, then pointed to the bread. No sound. His lips were sealed tight again. I didn't push, one step at a time. The most important thing now was his safety. While Leo ate at the table, I sat across from him, thinking. I had no experience with the law. All I knew was how to read books, teach elementary school, and run a household. I needed someone who understood these things. Someone I could trust. A name surfaced in my mind, Sarah. Sarah was the lawyer who had helped me with my husband's estate when he passed away. She was in her 30s, friendly but sharp. At the time, she had patiently explained everything about probate and inheritance laws without making me feel foolish. I still had her card in a drawer. After walking Leo to his special needs school nearby, holding his hand, I returned home and opened the bedroom drawer. Sarah's business card was still there, the corners slightly yellowed. My hand hesitated over my phone. If I made this call, it meant I was truly admitting that my own son and his wife might want to harm me. The part of me that still wanted to believe in my son screamed in protest. But the image of the dead cat and Leo's drawing slammed that door shut. I dialed the number. Sarah Collins' office. A professional female voice answered. "Sarah, this is Eleanor Miller, the retired teacher. You handled my husband's estate about 5 years ago?" "Oh, Mrs. Miller, of course. How are you?" Her tone warmed instantly. I took a breath. "I need your help. Can we meet? But I need this conversation to be kept from my son for now." Sarah paused for a fraction of a second. "Of course, Eleanor. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Or would you prefer I come to your house?" "Your office is better. I don't want anyone at home to get suspicious." We made an appointment for 3 o'clock. After hanging up, I felt a mix of relief and terror, as if I had just stepped into a dark room with only a small flashlight. That afternoon, I cleaned the house as usual, sweeping, mopping, doing laundry. As I worked, I checked every corner, every cabinet, every drawer. Who knew what else I might find? On the small desk near the window, Dan's laptop lay closed. He was usually very protective of it, but since he'd been busy with cruise preparations, he'd left it behind. I hesitated, then sat down. The laptop wasn't password protected. At home, he must have felt safe. I only intended to look for documents related to the house. But as soon as I opened his email, my eyes were drawn to several messages with bold subject lines: past due payment, final notice, second warning. My breath caught in my throat. I opened one. It was from a lender, referencing a business loan for an amount that seemed astronomical to me, hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was also a message thread with someone named Marco in a messaging app. The language was rough, full of slang, but the meaning was clear. Marco: Dan, I need that money by the end of the month. If not, you know how my guys work. Dan: I'm working on it. Marco: my mom's old house could be used as collateral. My wife is handling the paperwork. I covered my mouth. My mom's old house. That was this house. Another chat with Ashley appeared on the screen. Ashley: you're being too soft. Dan: as long as your mom is around, we'll never get out of this mess. The debt is piling up. Leo's therapy is expensive. We're barely keeping our heads above water paying the interest. Dan: I can't do it. Ashley: if she has an accident, who's going to blame us? Old people have heart attacks. They fall in the bathroom. Don't be a coward. Dan: your mom wouldn't want to see us suffer like this. I felt sick, my hands trembling violently. I shut the laptop quickly, afraid that if I read any more, I would faint. So it wasn't just about the insurance, not just about the herbal tea. Dan and Ashley were truly drowning in debt, and my house, my life, was just a number in their equation. Later that afternoon, I took an Uber to Sarah's office. It was in a tall building with cold air conditioning. Everyone was in suits. I felt small, like a lost country grandmother. Sarah greeted me in her office. Her hair was in a neat bun, her blouse crisp white. Her expression was serious but kind. Please, have a seat. Eleanor, what's going on? You sounded worried on the phone. I didn't answer right away. I took a breath and then, one by one, I took the items out of my bag: the bottle of tea, the envelope with the insurance policy, and a photocopy of the house deed. Sarah. My voice was hoarse. I suspect my son and daughter-in-law are trying to kill me. Sarah was visibly taken aback but maintained her professional composure. Tell me everything, from the beginning. In that overly air-conditioned office, I told her everything, about Leo suddenly speaking, the cat dying, Dr. Evans's warning, Leo's drawings, the conversations on the laptop, the life insurance policy. Sarah listened without interrupting, only occasionally taking notes. The motive is clear. Money. She said finally. The insurance, the house, and possibly other assets. You have some initial evidence. But to take this to the police, we need a recording or something more solid. And you must be very careful. They've already gone this far. They could become desperate. So what should I do? I asked. You have two options, Sarah replied. First, you could run, get away from them, but that means you'd lose your house. And they would likely get custody of Leo. Second, you pretend you know nothing. While you do that, we prepare a legal strategy and set a trap. A trap? Sarah nodded. Sometimes, people like this will only confess or reveal their full intentions when they feel completely safe. If they think you're still the gullible mother, they'll get careless. They'll talk more freely. We can record them. We can draw up documents to cut off their access to your assets. And, at the same time, we protect Leo. I looked at my own hands, wrinkled, dotted with age spots, but on that day, I felt they could still fight, still protect. I'm not running, I said, my voice quiet but firm. This house was built with the sweat of my late husband and me. I will not die like a mouse in a corner. And I will not let Leo fall into their hands. Sarah gave a small smile. This time, it wasn't a smile of pity, but of respect. All right, Eleanor, then we fight, but you have to promise me one thing. What's that? You continue to pretend you know nothing. You remain the Eleanor they think is easy to fool. Don't show your anger. Don't confront them directly. Right now, your feigned ignorance is your most powerful weapon. I nodded. I promise. In my heart, I said to myself, and to the photo of my husband I imagined watching over me. If they dare to trade my life for money, I will make sure they pay for it with everything they have. 2 days after I met with Sarah, my phone rang loudly on the living room table. Dan's name flashed on the screen. My heart immediately started pounding faster. Hello, Dan, I said, trying to sound normal. Hey, Mom. Dan's voice was mixed with the sound of loud music in the background. Probably from the ship. How are you? Are you drinking that herbal tea from Ashley? The question was a direct jab. But I remembered my promise to Sarah. I controlled my breathing. I'm doing fine, thank you. Yes, the tea is here. I've put it in the fridge. Drinking a little at a time. I lied, for the first time, to my own son. Ashley's light laugh could be heard in the background. Then her voice came closer. Hello, Eleanor, she said cheerfully. How does it feel? Is your body feeling lighter? A little, I said quietly. You know how it is at my age. Anything that people say is good for you. I'll drink. That's great. Ashley chuckled. Don't be stubborn. Now, that tea was expensive. I consulted with the nutritionist on board. We don't want you overexerting yourself and then, something suddenly happening. You know how much trouble it is for us when old people suddenly get sick. Her joking tone was far too light for such a heavy sentence. I swallowed hard. Yes, I replied, trying to force a small laugh. Leo was sitting next to me on the sofa. He stared at the screen of the video call without a sound. As soon as Ashley's face appeared, his eyes immediately dropped, and he hugged his blue toy car tightly. Leo, honey, look at Mommy and Daddy. Ashley chirped from the screen. Her sweetness feigned, waved to us. Leo raised his hand slightly, then lowered it again. Is Leo behaving, Mom? Dan asked. He's fine, eating, sleeping, playing. Sometimes he comes with me to the store. If he gets fussy, just give him some of that sedative Ashley packed in the big suitcase. Dan said casually, the one in the blue box. I was momentarily shocked. A sedative? Oh, honey, don't call it that. Ashley cut in quickly. It's just a children's calming vitamin. Eleanor, to help him sleep peacefully. No bad dreams. It's fine to give it to him once or twice if he's having trouble sleeping. I just hummed in response, feeling sickened by every word that came out of their mouths. After a few more pleasantries, the call ended. I placed the phone slowly on the table. Leo was still hugging his car. Leo, I called softly. Come here, sweetheart. He crawled closer, and I wrapped my arms around him. You don't have to take anything mommy put in your bag, okay? If there's any food or drink you're not sure about, give it to grandma first. He looked at me and nodded slowly. There was fear in his small eyes. The next few days passed with me playing my part, cooking, picking up Leo, greeting neighbors as usual, but every time a car stopped in front of the house, every time the phone rang, my heart reflexively leapt. One afternoon, the landline rang, an unknown number. Hello, good afternoon. Am I speaking with Eleanor Miller, the owner of the property at 123 Maple Street? A woman's formal voice asked. Yes, this is she. I'm calling from Bank of America. Ma'am, we just wanted to confirm an application to use your home's deed as collateral for a loan under the name of Mr. Daniel Miller. We require your consent as the owner. My hands immediately grew sweaty. I'm sorry, miss, but I never approved that. The deed to my house is in my possession, and I have never given anyone permission to use it as collateral. I see, ma'am. Our records show an old power of attorney, but our system flagged it because the recent ownership status was updated. It may require clarification. We will put a hold on the application for now. The words ownership status was updated reminded me of the paperwork I had just filed with Sarah, revising the trust for the house to protect Leo. It seemed the changes were already taking effect. Thank you for contacting me directly, I said. Please do not process any loans against my property without my signature. Understood, ma'am. As soon as the call ended, I sank weakly into a chair. Dan had already tried to use my house as collateral. At least for now, it was blocked. That evening, during a heavy downpour, I sat with Leo on the living room floor. We were drawing. He had started to relax a bit more when he had colored pencils in his hand. What are you most afraid of at home with mommy? I asked quietly, pretending it was just a casual chat. Leo didn't answer for a long time. He drew two adult figures standing face to face. Their mouths were open as if they were screaming. Between them, he drew a small child cowering. Above the woman's head, he drew a raised hand. Slowly, he spoke, so quietly, I almost missed it. Mommy hits daddy, he said. His speech was a bit slurred, but the words were clear. I held my breath. Why does mommy hit daddy? Daddy, not brave, he said again, the words broken. Mommy says daddy a coward, if he doesn't finish it. I forced myself not to bombard him with questions. Finish what? Leo was silent. He drew a small house with the word, Grandma, above it. Just like his previous drawing. His eyes glistened with tears. If Grandma is gone, he said softly, almost a whisper. I stroked his hair. That's enough, sweetheart, thank you. That night, my cell phone rang again. It was Ashley. Eleanor, I just got a notification from the bank, she said, her voice trying to sound casual. They said there's an issue with the house deed. How could the ownership have changed? What have you been doing? My heart pounded, but I remembered Sarah's advice. Play dumb. An issue? Oh, dear, I'm not sure. Ashley, you know, we had that old power of attorney set up. Remember? To make it easy for you to handle property taxes, utilities, things like that. Now they're saying it can't be used for a loan? But Dan and I need the funds for his business. Oh, I feigned a frown, though she couldn't see me. Maybe the lawyer made a mistake back then. I don't understand these things. Ashley, all I know is the house still safe? I get scared when you talk about using it as collateral. What if you can't pay? Where would I live? Ashley was silent for a moment. Then she let out a forced laugh. Oh, Eleanor, I'm just trying to help Dan's business. Don't you trust your own son? Oh, honey, my brain is old. I only understand one thing. This house is all I have. I can't bear the thought of having to move. You two can sort out your business. But please, don't use my house. I deliberately seasoned my words with the anxious, ignorant tone of an old woman scared of bureaucracy. Ashley took a deep breath. I could picture her annoyed expression. Fine, I'll talk to Dan about it, she said coldly. And Eleanor, don't listen to outsiders. There are a lot of scammers out there, especially lawyers who just want to prey on the elderly. I understood her veiled threat. Yes, I'm scared of that too. That's why I never deal with anyone except my own children. I emphasized that last part, to give her a false sense of security. After the call, I leaned against my bedroom wall, my breathing still uneven. On one hand, I wanted to scream, to curse them, to slap them. On the other, I knew that if they were angry about the bank today, it meant their financial pressure was mounting, and the more desperate they became, the more reckless their actions might be. That night, in front of the mirror, I studied my own face, the wrinkles on my forehead, the bags under my eyes, the downturned corners of my mouth. I'm no longer just a hurt mother, I whispered to my reflection. I'm facing a son and daughter-in-law who are willing to become murderers. The fear was still there, but behind it, my anger grew ever clearer. That night, the rain fell in sheets, and the wind slapped against the windows. The sound of distant thunder rumbled. I had just put Leo to bed. He was curled up in his small bed, his blue car clutched in his hand, his breathing steady. I went down to the kitchen to place his empty milk glass in the sink. The yellowish kitchen light cast a glow on the gas stove in the corner. I felt a little hungry and thought I might make some instant ramen to warm up. I stood in front of the stove, about to turn the knob. Suddenly, my nose caught something, a strange, pungent smell, like gas, but mixed with the dampness of the rain. I froze, my brow furrowed. I sniffed the air again. It was definitely gas. Panic surged through me. I immediately flipped off all the light switches near the stove and covered my mouth and nose with the hem of my nightgown. The regulator on the gas tank looked slightly crooked. My old hands trembled as I touched it. A terrible feeling crept over me. I couldn't remember touching the tank at all that afternoon. I peered at the hose connection. The fitting seemed loose, as if someone had recently tampered with it. My breath hitched. If I had turned on the stove without realizing, my heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly turned the valve to shut it off, disconnected the regulator, and slowly dragged the heavy gas tank out of the kitchen, half praying as I went. Just as I reached the back door, I nearly collided with a figure standing there. Mrs. Miller. I almost screamed before realizing it was Mr. Henderson, my next-door neighbor. A folded umbrella in his hand dripped rainwater onto the floor. Mr. Henderson, my voice trembled. I could smell gas from my yard. A really strong smell, he said seriously. So I came over and knocked on your gate. No answer. I saw the back door was a little open, so I let myself in. I had just noticed the back door wasn't fully closed. I was sure I had shut it earlier. I just noticed it myself. Mr. Henderson, I said quietly. I was about to cook, but the smell was so strange. Mr. Henderson bent down to examine the regulator. This fitting looks like it was deliberately loosened. Eleanor, it didn't just come off on its own. The word deliberately sent a chill down my spine. Who could have gotten into my kitchen this afternoon? Only Leo and I were home. No repairmen had come, unless Dan had stopped by on his own at some point. Without Ashley? No, they were still on the cruise. But Ashley had a spare key to the house. She'd insisted on it years ago, just in case of an emergency. My head spun. Mr. Henderson patted my shoulder gently. Don't use the gas tonight, Eleanor. Call a professional tomorrow to check everything. It's a good thing I was walking by and smelled it. If not, he didn't finish the sentence. In my mind, an image flashed, the house exploding, fire consuming everything. People would just say, what a shame, an old woman and her grandson, living alone. They didn't realize the gas was leaking. Oh, my lord, was all I could manage to say. After Mr. Henderson left, I stood for a long time in the semi-dark kitchen. The sound of the rain outside seemed like sinister whispers. First, the tea, now, the gas. How many coincidences did I have to experience before I stopped calling them coincidences? I went upstairs to Leo's room. The boy was still sound asleep. I sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair gently. Leo, I whispered softly. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Grandma, his voice was faint, barely audible. Grandma needs to ask you something one more time. You can answer now, or you can answer later. But Grandma needs to know. He looked at me, his small eyes blinking a few times. Did you ever hear Mommy and Daddy talking about Grandma? About this house? About what would happen if Grandma wasn't here? Leo swallowed. His gaze drifted away, then returned to my face. Slowly, he sat up, leaning against his pillow. One night, he said, his words halting. I held my breath. This was the longest sentence I had ever heard from him. Mommy and Daddy were fighting. Mommy pushed Daddy. Mommy said, if Daddy wasn't brave, He was worse than something. I forget. His eyes began to well up with tears. Mommy said if Grandma was gone soon, the house could be collateral. The insurance would pay out. The debts would be gone. The words were like hammers striking my chest. Daddy said he was scared. Mommy said, accidents are easy to arrange. Old people fall easily. Have heart attacks easily. Leo covered his face with both hands, his body shaking with sobs. I immediately pulled him into a hug. Shush, that's enough. You've helped Grandma so much. I'm so sorry I made you remember these things, I said, fighting back my own tears. In that small embrace, something inside me shifted. My fear merged with my anger and solidified into resolve. The next day, I went to see Sarah again. This time, I wasn't trembling like I was during our first meeting. I was still afraid, but my voice was steady. Sarah listened to my story about the gas leak and Leo's confession, her expression hardening. Eleanor, this has gone beyond planning, she said seriously. This was an attempt. You were lucky it failed. Can the police arrest them now? Technically, it's difficult without direct, solid proof. We haven't even had the tea officially tested in a lab. They could claim the gas leak was an accident. What we have is a pattern: the tea, the gas, the insurance, the overheard conversations, and Leo's testimony. It's all strong enough to build a case. But we still need the final nail in the coffin. The final nail? Their own confession, or at least, them speaking bluntly while being recorded. I fell silent. They had spoken like that in the house before, but only Leo had heard them. Then we'll make them talk again, Sarah said quietly, and this time, we'll record it. At the same time, we'll lock down your assets. She explained her plan. The house would be transferred into an irrevocable trust, making it impossible for it to be used as collateral or sold without my consent. With Leo as the ultimate beneficiary, the old power of attorney would be officially revoked. In the meantime, we start collecting every piece of evidence, she continued. Photos, recordings, messages, everything. If they call and say something suspicious, write it down. If you can, record it. I nodded. It felt like I was being taught the art of war by someone who had seen many battlefields. One more thing, Sarah said. Leo needs professional help. If his testimony is needed later, he has to be strong and stable enough to give it. I know a child psychologist named Dr. Miller. She's young, but she's excellent. Would you like me to schedule an appointment for Leo? I took a long breath. If it will help him, yes. That night, when I got home, Leo was playing with Legos on the floor. I sat down beside him. Leo, I said softly, soon, Grandma is going to take you to meet someone named Dr. Miller. She's a nice lady whose job is to listen to children's stories. He looked up, his expression hesitant. I know you're scared, but you're not alone, sweetheart. Grandma is here. I won't let anyone hurt you again. What you saw, what you heard, all of it is heavy. We'll carry it together, okay? Slowly, Leo shifted his body closer to mine. His hand reached out and gripped the hem of my house dress. I want to talk more, he whispered, but I'm scared. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It's okay to be scared. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you talk even when you are. We'll learn how to do it together. Slowly. Later that night, I sat on my bed, staring at my husband's photo on the nightstand. Honey, I'm so sorry, I whispered. I spoiled Dan too much. I thought love was enough to make him a good man. I was wrong, but I'm not going to be silent anymore. I will protect our grandson. And I will make them see that this old woman still has teeth. For the first time since all this began, I didn't just feel hunted. I felt like I was starting to hunt back. I was folding Leo's clothes in the living room when the sound of a car pulling into the driveway startled me. The wall clock showed it was only 11 a.m. I peeked through the blinds. Dan's car. My stomach churned with a mix of heat and ice. They were supposed to still be on the cruise. The front door opened with a sharp sound. Ashley strode in first, sunglasses pushed up on her head, her face sour. Behind her, Dan hauled a large suitcase. You're home already? I asked, feigning surprise. There was a problem with the ship's engine. Ashley answered curtly. The company gave us a voucher for a future sailing. So, vacation's ruined. Dan just sighed, dropping the suitcase with a thud. He looked pale, his eyes weary. I immediately remembered Sarah's plan. We weren't fully prepared, but the enemy was already at the gate. Well, the important thing is that you're safe, I said quietly. Are you hungry? I can heat up some soup. I'm fine, Mom, Dan said, slumping onto the sofa and pressing his temples. Just a headache. Ashley didn't sit down. She stood in the middle of the living room, surveying her surroundings. Where's Leo? At school. I'll pick him up this afternoon. Ashley nodded curtly, then suddenly strode toward the kitchen. My heart raced. The cabinet where I'd hidden the tea bottle was in the kitchen. I followed her slowly. Ashley opened the upper cabinets, took out a glass, then opened the refrigerator. Her eyes scanned quickly. Where's my herbal tea, Eleanor? She asked, turning to face me. I forced a sheepish smile. Oh, that. I drank a little, but it tasted a bit funny, so I threw it out. My stomach couldn't handle it. Ashley blinked. You threw it out? Her voice rose. That was expensive, Eleanor. I had it specially ordered. Oh, I'm so sorry, Ashley. I didn't know. I thought it was just regular tea. I forgot to tell you. I deliberately added a touch of forgetfulness to my excuse. Ashley stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to read my mind. Then she let out a sharp sigh. Next time someone gives you something, don't just throw it away. I was trying to do something nice for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The afternoon felt endless. They decided to stay at my house for a few days, ostensibly to save money on a hotel since Dan's business was struggling. Besides, this is our family home, right? Ashley said with a thin smile. It's fine if we stay here, isn't it? I just nodded. What else could I say? If I refused, they would become suspicious. The first night, the atmosphere in the house changed. Ashley took over the kitchen, rearranging my cabinets without asking, moving plates, glasses, even my spices. Dan paced back and forth on the porch. On the phone, his voice tense, mentioning the name, Marco, several times. When I brought Leo home from school, he immediately clung to me. He glanced at Ashley as if she were a ghost. Leo, come to mommy, Ashley called out sweetly. Slowly, Leo walked toward her. As he got close, Ashley whispered in his ear, her voice low but loud enough for me to hear. Remember, you don't say anything you're not supposed to. If you make mommy mad, I'll send you far away. You'll never see your grandma again. Leo's face went pale. He looked down. Rage boiled up inside me, but I swallowed it whole. I just hugged Leo tightly afterward, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. A few days later, Ashley started spreading stories to the neighbors. I heard it from Mrs. Gable next door. Eleanor, Ashley was saying you've been getting forgetful lately. Mrs. Gable whispered to me on my porch. Said you've been suspicious of people. Talking to yourself. Is that true, or is she just talking? I took a deep breath. You know me, Carol. I can still balance my checkbook without a single mistake. Mrs. Gable nodded. Yeah, that's why I didn't believe it right away. But you be careful, Eleanor. The look in your son and his wife's eyes, it's different now. The next day, Ashley insisted on taking me to a large hospital. For what? I asked. A routine checkup, of course. She said, you're not getting any younger. I found a good neurologist. We need to know what's going on in that head of yours. We don't want to be caught off guard if there are signs of dementia. Her tone was sugary sweet, but her words were cold. In the doctor's office, Ashley did most of the talking. Doctor, lately my mother-in-law has been misplacing things. She's become suspicious of people, and she talks to herself. We're worried it might be dementia. I turned, shocked. I've only forgotten my keys a few times. Ashley. It's been happening a lot more than that. Eleanor, she cut in, her voice sounding patient and concerned in front of the doctor. We're just worried. The neurologist spoke with me briefly, tested my memory, asked me the date, the president's name, had me do simple calculations. I answered everything without a problem. Overall, her cognitive functions are still quite good for her age. The doctor said, there might be some age-related forgetfulness, but I wouldn't classify it as dementia at this point. I can write up a report if you need one. I saw Ashley's jaw tighten. Doctor, but what if her condition worsens later on? Can we legally represent her in her affairs? The doctor looked at her, then at me. That's outside my purview, ma'am. Those matters are typically handled through a lawyer or the courts. But as long as Mrs. Miller is lucid and can communicate her wishes, her rights remain her own. We drove home in silence. Ashley's face was dark. That night after dinner, I went to my room early. I placed my purse on the desk, not realizing the zipper was slightly open. Inside was an envelope containing photocopies of the documents from Sarah, and her business card. When I stepped out to go to the bathroom for a moment, I heard my bedroom door creak open softly. "Mom?" Dan's voice. I hurried back. Dan was standing near my desk. My purse had been moved. "What are you looking for, Dan?" I asked, keeping my tone gentle. "Nothing. I was just going to ask if you had any aspirin," he said quickly. His eyes darted from my purse to my face. I smiled. "It's in the medicine cabinet. Not my purse. You know where it's always been." "Oh, right," he laughed, but it sounded hollow. I forgot. His gaze lingered on my purse for a second too long. My heart pounded. What if he had seen Sarah's business card? Late that night, I could hear the muffled sounds of an argument coming from Dan and Ashley's room. "You idiot, why did you put my name on the insurance policy?" Ashley's voice was sharp. "Now everyone will be suspicious." "I was just following the agent's advice." Dan shot back, frustrated. "He said I could write anyone. You were the one pushing me to hurry up. And now the house can't be used as collateral." The tea was thrown out. The gas failed. How many times do we have to try? I pulled my pillow over my ears, but their voices still pierced through. "If this keeps up, Marco is going to finish us." "Dan." Ashley's voice lowered, full of pressure. "His guys are not nice people. Do you want to see them drag me and Leo out of here?" "They wouldn't touch Leo," Dan said softly. "If we don't pay, they won't care. It's about the money, Dan. Money. And the only fast way is this. Your mother is old." I stopped breathing. "If it's an accident, people will just say it was her time." Ashley continued. "In a nursing home? Who would care if someone fell in the bathroom?" That's when I knew. They had already discussed sending me to a nursing home. A pain shot through my throat. I stared at the dark ceiling, feeling something inside me crack, then harden again. For the first time, the thought of giving up crossed my mind. Just let them have the house. Let them have my life. As long as Leo was safe. But the image of Leo cowering in a corner, of Ashley's threat to send him far away, made me sit up again. "No," I whispered to myself in the darkness. "If I give up, they will take everything. The house, my life, and Leo's future." I closed my eyes, forcing back the tears that were finally flowing. That night, I realized I had hit rock bottom. But it was there, at the lowest point, that I understood one thing. There was no going back. There was only forward, whatever the risk. The days following Dan and Ashley's argument felt like walking on broken glass. Every movement had to be careful. Every word guarded. One small mistake, and Leo and I might not get a second chance. Early one morning, while Ashley was out for groceries, I locked my bedroom door and called Sarah. My voice was a hushed whisper. "Sarah, they've talked about sending me to a nursing home. They said if I had an accident there, no one would care." Sarah was silent for a few seconds on the other end. "Eleanor, this means we have to accelerate our plan. We need evidence they can't deny. A direct confession. Are you ready?" "Whatever it takes to keep Leo safe," I replied. "All right, the next time they start talking, try to record them. Pretend to be asleep. Pretend to be weak. People who think they're winning tend to get careless with their words." She advised. "Do you have a smartphone that can record discreetly?" "Yes," I answered. "Use it. If you get a clear recording, send it to me. From there, we can get the police involved." That evening, as if the universe had heard our plan, Ashley came to my room with a glass of warm milk. "Here, Eleanor, drink this. It'll help you sleep. You've looked so pale lately," she said, placing the glass on my nightstand. I glanced at the milk. It smelled normal, but who knew what was in it? I didn't want to find out. "Thank you, Ashley," I said. As soon as she left the room, I waited a few minutes, listening as her footsteps receded toward the living room. I picked up the glass and poured the milk into the soil of a small, artificial plant in the corner of my room. It would soak in without being obvious in the sink. Then I took my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and placed it under my pillow with the microphone facing the door. I lay down, pulled the covers up, and closed my eyes. When Ashley peeked into the room a short while later, I let out a loud, fake yawn. "Did you drink it, Eleanor?" "I did, dear. It was delicious. You're quite the expert at these soothing drinks." I chuckled, then pretended to rub my eyes. Good. If you're asleep, I'll go clean up the kitchen, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. After that, I focused on breathing slowly and deeply, like someone drifting off to sleep. I left my bedside lamp on, casting a dim glow. It wasn't long before I heard my bedroom door open quietly. 2 sets of footsteps entered. I remained perfectly still, my breathing steady and heavy. The phone under my pillow felt like a ticking time bomb. Ashley's voice was low but clear enough. "See, Dan? 1 drink and she's out like a light." Dan grunted. "Are you sure this won't show up in a doctor's exam? Do you think I'm stupid? This just helps her sleep deeply." "Dan, it's not for now. It's for later. We do it slowly, so that when something does happen, people will say, 'Oh, it's not surprising. She'd been so weak lately. She needed medication to sleep.'" My heart was pounding, but my body had to remain limp. "Ashley, I'm still not sure about this." Dan's voice was a low murmur. "Dan, how far have we come?" Ashley cut him off, her voice laced with irritation. "The herbal tea failed. The gas failed. Now we establish a pattern of her being frail. There's just one more step. Marco has given us a deadline. If we don't pay by the end of the month, he's sending his guys. Do you want them showing up here? Seeing Leo? Seeing me?" Dan sighed heavily. "I just can't imagine it, if Mom is really." "What's the difference, Dan?" Ashley's voice was sharp, insistent. "She's going to die eventually. Everyone dies. The difference is, if she dies now, it saves us. If she dies later, we'll already be ruined. Do you want your son to live his life being chased by debt collectors?" There was a moment of silence. I could picture Dan running his hands through his hair. "The insurance policy is ready. The house can be claimed. We can start over. We can move, start a new business, far away from here." Ashley continued. "Your mother is just one person. Dan, we are 3, 4. If we have another child, that's the future. Don't talk about my mom like that." Dan's voice was broken. "If you want to keep acting like a child, fine, but when Marco shows up and beats you in front of Leo, don't blame me when I tell everyone what a coward you are." Ashley hissed. "Tomorrow, we'll start the application to move her into that facility. It will be easier there. 1 fall in the shower, who's going to question it?" There was the sound of footsteps retreating, a chair scraping slightly. "Now get out. Dan, what if she wakes up and gets suspicious?" The bedroom door closed again. I waited for what felt like an eternity, at least 5 minutes, before I dared to open my eyes. My breath returned in a ragged gasp. My hand trembled as I pulled the phone from under the pillow. The recording was still running. I hit stop and immediately saved the file with a clear name. I didn't sleep at all that night, but for the first time, I had something concrete in my hands. The next day, when Ashley went to the market and Dan left to meet someone, I locked my door and sent the audio file to Sarah via secure message. My hands were shaking. A short while later, Sarah called. Her voice was different, sterner. "Eleanor, this is incredibly strong," she said. "They mention the tea, the gas, the insurance, the nursing home, even this Marco character. This is enough for the police to start an investigation. But if you want something more satisfying, we can arrange a moment where everything comes to light in front of everyone. So it's not just a legal case, but a social lesson for them." "What do you mean?" "We make them feel completely safe, like they've won. Then we pull the rug out from under them in front of witnesses, neighbors, the doctor, the psychologist, everyone. Are you up for that?" I paused for a moment. The image of Ashley's smug face and Dan's averted gaze flashed in my mind. "Yes," I answered. "I want them to know what they did. And I want other people to know, too. I want them to lose their masks." "In that case," Sarah said quietly, "we'll start preparing. Is there an upcoming event we could use as a reason for a family gathering? A birthday? An anniversary? Anything?" I thought of the calendar. Leo's birthday was coming up. We usually just let it pass quietly. We could have a small party for him this year, I suggested. Invite a few close neighbors. "That's perfect," Sarah said. "On that day, I will come as the family attorney helping with the estate planning. At the same time, police officers who have heard the recording will be standing by, disguised as guests. Dr. Miller will also be there to support Leo. If we're lucky, Leo will feel brave enough to speak. He's still so scared," I said softly. I'll ask Dr. Miller to intensify her sessions with him. Eleanor, your job now is just one thing: hold on. And keep up the pretense. Don't change your behavior toward Dan and Ashley. In the following days, Leo began meeting with Dr. Miller regularly at a small, private clinic. The young woman was gentle and patient, often sitting on the floor with Leo, playing games while they talked. One afternoon, Dr. Miller approached me after a session. Eleanor, Leo is an incredibly smart boy. He knows a lot, and he remembers a lot. He's scared, but he wants to protect you. I believe that when the moment comes, he'll be able to speak. Maybe not for long, but it will be enough. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Thank you. At home, I started planning the small birthday party for Leo. I told Dan and Ashley. It's a shame. His birthday is always so quiet. This year, I want to invite a few neighbors over so someone can sing happy birthday to him. Ashley protested at first, citing the need to save money. But Dan, perhaps out of guilt, relented. Let it go, Ashley. It's once a year, he said. In my heart, I knew it wasn't just a birthday party. It was the day that Eleanor Miller would stop running and finally stand my ground. The day they would see that the old woman they thought was a fool had actually built the stage for their own downfall. Leo's birthday fell on a Sunday. I was busy in the kitchen from morning, making meatballs, frying spring rolls, and arranging a large platter of noodles. The house smelled of fried onions and soy sauce. The atmosphere was festive, but inside my chest, a knot of tension tightened. Leo sat in a chair by the window, looking at the cheap balloons I'd taped to the walls. In the center of the table was a small cake with "Happy 8th Birthday, Leo" written in frosting. He gently touched the frosting letters, as if he couldn't believe the celebration was for him. Are you happy? I asked. He nodded slightly. Scared, he whispered. I stroked his hair. Grandma is here, and Dr. Miller will be here, too. You're not alone. One by one, the guests arrived. Mrs. Gable and her husband brought a gelatin mold. Mr. Henderson came in a slightly faded polo shirt. Soon after, Dr. Evans appeared, saying he wanted to drop off a small gift for Leo. Behind them, two well-dressed men entered. I pretended to be surprised, though Sarah had told me they were police officers, undercover as her colleagues. Sarah arrived last, carrying a manila folder. She smiled at me, her brief glance a source of strength. Across the room, Dr. Miller sat near Leo, pretending to help him blow up a balloon. Dan and Ashley stood near the door, their faces plastered with cheerful smiles. Ashley was busy handing out plates, playing the part of the perfect hostess. Dan kept glancing at the folder in Sarah's hands. After everyone was settled, we sang "Happy Birthday." The singing was off-key, but I nearly cried watching Leo's shy, awkward smile as he blew out the candles. Make a wish, sweetheart, I whispered. He closed his eyes for a moment. I didn't know what he wished for. Afterward, we ate. The conversation was light at first: the weather, gas prices, school, but I knew this was just the prelude. When the plates started to empty, I stood up. My knees were shaking slightly, but my voice had to be clear. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. Besides celebrating Leo's birthday, I also wanted to share some good news with the family today. All heads turned toward me. Dan looked at me suspiciously. What is it, Mom? Ashley smiled, but I knew it was a wary smile. I turned to Sarah. This is Sarah Collins, the attorney who helped with my late husband's estate. I've asked her to come today to help with some matters concerning this house, I said, my voice intentionally loud. Ashley's eyes flashed. Dan straightened his back. What kind of matters, Mom? Dan's voice was tense. I feigned nervousness. Well, I'm getting older. I'm afraid something might happen suddenly. So I thought, before my time is up, it's better to have everything sorted out, so you two won't have to worry later. Several neighbors nodded in understanding. In our culture, sorting out one's estate before passing is not uncommon. Sarah opened her folder slowly. That's correct. Mrs. Miller has asked me to clarify a few points regarding the rights to this property. Who is authorized to manage it? And how to protect her grandson, our little friend Leo here. Ashley beamed, as if she had already won. Yes, I've been telling Dan the same thing. It's much better to have everything organized, so that if something happens, we can take care of it quickly, without burdening an elderly parent. Sarah glanced at her, then back at the paper. I'll read a brief summary, so that everyone present can act as a witness. The room suddenly grew quieter. It is written here, Sarah read, that Mrs. Eleanor Miller hereby declares the revocation of all prior forms of power of attorney granted to her son and daughter-in-law concerning the use of this property as collateral or for the transfer of ownership, due to concerns of potential misuse. Ashley's face fell. Wait, she interrupted. Revocation? I thought this was about granting a new power of attorney, not taking one away. Please, let me finish, Sarah said calmly. Furthermore, this property will be placed into an irrevocable trust, which states that the sole legal owner remains Mrs. Miller until her passing, upon which primary rights will pass to her grandson, Leo Miller. Her son and daughter-in-law may reside here only so long as they abide by the rules of the trust, which prohibit any form of pressure or violence against the owner and her grandson. Dan shot to his feet, his face flushing with anger. Mom, what is the meaning of this? It's like I'm not even your son. Do you trust outsiders more than your own family? I raised my hand slowly. Sit down, Dan, and listen to the end. Ashley hissed. This is the lawyer's doing. I told you, Eleanor, lawyers just want to squeeze money out of old people. They scare you into thinking you need them, and then they get a big payday. A few neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. The undercover officers remained calm in their seats. Sarah closed the folder. Before we proceed with the signing, I have a duty to ask a question in front of these witnesses. She said, Mrs. Miller, have you, at any point, felt pressured, threatened, or been the subject of an attempt to harm you by anyone for the purpose of financial gain? My heart hammered. This was the moment we had planned. I took a deep breath. Yes, I answered quietly. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Eleanor, Dan exclaimed. By whom? Mr. Henderson asked instinctively. I looked at each face in the room, my gaze finally resting on Dan and Ashley. By my own son, and his wife, I said, my voice trembling but loud. That's a lie, Ashley shrieked. Eleanor, don't be ridiculous, not in front of all these people. Dan looked completely stunned. Mom, what are you talking about? I reached into the pocket of my house dress and pulled out my phone. My hand was shaking, but I held it steady. If it were just my word, people might say I'm senile. That's why I recorded it. I pressed play. The recording from that night filled our small living room. Ashley's soft but sharp voice echoed. The herbal tea failed. The gas failed. Now we establish a pattern of her being frail. There's just one more step. If we don't pay by the end of the month, he's sending his guys. Your mother is old. If it's an accident, people will just say it was her time. In a nursing home, one fall in the shower, who's going to question it? The faces in the room froze. Mrs. Gable covered her mouth. Mr. Henderson muttered a curse under his breath. Dr. Evans stared at the couple in shock. Dan stood rigid, his eyes wide with horror. Ashley lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. One of the undercover officers rose smoothly, blocking her path. Ma'am, please calm down. It's edited. It has to be edited. Ashley screamed. Anyone can fake a recording these days. This is all her doing. She pointed a finger at Sarah. This lawyer put her up to this. I felt like I was about to collapse. But then, Leo suddenly stood up. Dr. Miller placed a hand on his shoulder for a moment, then slowly let go. No, Leo's voice was quiet, but it cut through the chaos. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the boy they had thought was mute, now standing and trembling in the middle of the room, clutching his blue car tightly. Leo swallowed hard. I saw Mommy pour something in Grandma's tea, he said, his words broken but clear. I heard Mommy say, if Grandma is gone, the house is for collateral, insurance for the debt? Daddy? Tears streamed down his cheeks. I was scared. I was quiet. But Grandma is nice. Grandma loves me. I don't want Grandma to die. Dr. Miller stood behind him, ready to catch him if he fell. But Leo remained standing. Leo, Dan cried out, his face a mask of anger and devastation. You don't know what you're saying. That's enough, one of the officers said, his voice now official. He pulled out his badge. We have heard the recording and the witness testimony. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, we're going to have to ask you to come down to the station for questioning. Ashley let out a short, hysterical laugh. The police? You believe the ramblings of a little boy who just started talking today? This is all a setup. Eleanor, You are a cruel, cruel woman. I stood up slowly, my knees unsteady, but my eyes were level. You are the cruel ones, I said. I carried Dan for 9 months. I raised him on a teacher's modest salary. I accepted you, Ashley, into this family. I looked the other way when you started to change. But you repaid me with poison, with gas, with plans for a nursing home. Dan looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, I was desperate. The debt? Marco, I was scared. I was scared, too, I replied, scared of dying slowly at the hands of my own son. But I was even more scared of seeing my grandson grow up in a house filled with hatred and murder plots. The police gently escorted Dan and Ashley toward the door. Ashley continued to scream, to curse, to blame everyone else. Dan just hung his head, his shoulders shaking. At the doorway, he turned back one last time. Mom, I'm your only son. I looked at him, my heart torn to pieces. But too much had happened. It is precisely because you are my only son that I allowed you to hurt me for so long. I said quietly, today, that ends. I reached for Leo's hand and held it tightly. His small fingers were warm and damp with sweat. Outside, a police car was waiting. Curious neighbors had started to gather at the fence, whispering among themselves. On that day, the mask of a happy family that they had worn for so long crumbled in front of everyone. As the front door closed, my house became quiet again. But this time, it wasn't a frightening silence. It was the calm after a great storm. I hugged Leo tightly. It's over, sweetheart, I whispered. Grandma isn't running anymore, and you don't have to run, either. We are home, and they will face the consequences of their actions. In the months following Leo's birthday, our lives slowly took on a new shape. The house was no longer filled with Ashley's bossy commands or Dan's half-hearted apologies. It was much quieter, but it was a quiet I could live with. The legal process moved forward. Sarah kept me updated. The audio recording, Dr. Evans's statement, Leo's testimony, and the police findings about the fraudulent loan application, it all came together. I only had to appear a few times at the police station and the courthouse, answering questions as calmly as I could. I always brought Leo with me when it didn't conflict with his school schedule. And Dr. Miller would be there to support him. He would sit beside me, clutching the hem of my dress as usual. Every time Dan or Ashley's name was mentioned, I could feel his small body tense up. But the darkness in Leo's eyes was beginning to fade. At home, our routine was simple. In the mornings, I'd make breakfast and walk Leo to school. I'd go grocery shopping with Mrs. Gable, and in the afternoons, I'd help Leo with his homework. Sometimes Dr. Miller would visit, and they would draw or play card games while they talked. One afternoon, Leo showed me a drawing. On the paper was our house, the big maple tree out front, and 2 figures standing on the porch, a grandmother with graying hair and a little boy holding a blue car. In the corner of the page, he had drawn another figure, an adult man, standing far away, outside the fence. Who's this? I asked, pointing to the figure in the corner. Daddy, Leo answered quietly. He's far away. I swallowed hard. Are you angry with Daddy? Leo was quiet for a moment, then shook his head, scared. But sometimes, I miss him. His words were a stab to the heart. I stroked his hair. Grandma is angry, too, and very hurt, but I'm still his mother. The feelings are all mixed up. That's normal. The important thing is that we don't forget what he did. But we don't become hateful people because of it. The day of the sentencing finally arrived. The courtroom was cold, the benches hard. I sat in the back row with Sarah. Up front, Dan and Ashley sat at the defendant's table. They were dressed neatly, but their faces were etched with exhaustion. The judge read a long verdict. In essence, Ashley was found to be the primary architect of the plan, actively attempting to take my life for financial gain. Dan was found to be complicit, though his role was seen as more passive, failing to stop the plot. Ashley was sentenced to several years in prison. Dan received a slightly shorter sentence. The assets they had tried to manipulate were ordered to be seized to pay off their debts and for restitution. The menacing name, Marco, also surfaced in the proceedings as a loan shark who used illegal collection methods, leading to separate civil and criminal cases for him and Dan. Their business was in ruins. After the hearing, we were allowed a brief supervised conversation in a small room. Dan sat on a metal bench, his handcuffs removed. He looked thinner. There were new lines around his eyes. Mom, his voice was heavy. I sat across from him, keeping a distance. Dan. I'm sorry. He immediately looked down, tears falling onto the concrete floor. There's no excuse. The debt, the pressure. Marco, it was all just an excuse. I was a terrible son. I was willing to think of you as just a number. If you hadn't had that recording, maybe you wouldn't be here. I was silent for a long time. In my mind's eye, I saw a little Danny in his school uniform, proudly showing me his report card. And then the image shifted to the adult Dan. His voice a whisper behind my bedroom door. Planning my death. I was so angry with you, I said. To this day, I still am, but I'm also tired of being angry for the rest of my life. So, as your mother, I forgive you, but forgiving you doesn't mean I forget what you did. Dan looked up, his eyes red. Mom, will you ask them to reduce my sentence? I shook my head slowly. No, you have to face the consequences. What would you learn if I pulled strings to get you out? If you get out early, it won't be because I played games with the truth, but because you demonstrated real change from within. That's not my business. That's between you, God, and your own heart. He sobbed. I understand. And one more thing, I added. I will not allow you to touch this house or Leo's life until I am certain you have truly changed. If, someday, you become a better man, and when Leo is older he wants to see you, that will be his choice. But for now, the boundary is clear. Dan nodded, looking down again. Our time was up. As I stood to leave, he tried to kiss my hand. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then allowed it, not as a sign of obedience, but as a sign that I would not become a monster like he had been. With Ashley, it was different. In another brief meeting, she was still trying to blame everyone else, the system, the lawyers, me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only rage that her plan had failed. I didn't say much, just one thing. I hope one day you realize that people are not rungs on a ladder you can step on to climb to the life you want. I said, and if that day ever comes, it will be for your own sake. I am done with you. After that, I chose not to see her again. Several more months passed. The kids in the neighborhood no longer whispered in surprise when they saw Leo. They were used to hearing his voice now, even though it was still quiet and he didn't talk much. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, peeling a mango. Leo sat beside me, drawing again. Grandma, he called, when Daddy gets out, and if he's a good person, can he come visit? The same question from his drawing, now spoken with more calm. I thought about my answer for a moment. If, one day, your daddy has truly changed, and if you feel safe, we can talk about it then. I replied, I will never force you to see someone who made you feel scared. But I also won't teach you to hate for the rest of your life. What's important is that you know your boundaries. You know you have the right to say no. Leo nodded. I want Daddy to say sorry to you, too. We'll see, I said softly. Inside the house, the documents Sarah and I had prepared were filed away safely. The deed, the trust agreement, everything was clear. The house was safe until I was gone. And then it would belong to Leo. No more secret games behind my back. Sarah still visited sometimes, just for tea and a chat. Dr. Miller did too, though her visits were less frequent now that Leo was so much more stable. That night, before going to bed, I stood in the middle of my living room. This house had almost become my tomb. Now, it was a sanctuary for my grandson and for me. The old family photo was still on the wall, me, Dan, Ashley, and Leo. I hadn't taken it down. I didn't want to pretend the past never happened. But next to it, there was a new photo now. Just me and Leo, sitting on the porch, laughing. My hair was messy from the wind. The blue car clutched in his hand. I made it through the worst of it. I murmured to myself, they tried to kill me for this house. But in the end, it was their own greed that died here. I turned off the lights one by one. Leo was already asleep in his room, hugging the same blue car that had been with him on the day he first warned me. I lay down and pulled up the covers. Outside, the sounds of the night were ordinary, a car driving by, a distant dog barking, the faint sound of a radio from the house next door. They were no longer sounds of threat. For the first time in a long time, I closed my eyes without the fear that I might not wake up again. I knew that tomorrow morning, I would wake up in my own home, to my own grandson, and the life we were living was the life we had chosen, not one that had been forced upon us.